Adam, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Sorry about the no huddle here.
I'm all for it. This is how we do it.
This is how we do it.
Yeah.
As you said, we've been on shakier ground.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of a few episodes.
Exactly. So I've got a special guest in the litter box. Maybe not so special a guest. Sorry, Steve. So
just a guest. Just whoever.
Just a guest. I think we got to demote Steve. At some point, you're on here enough and you get demoted to special guest to just guest. So sorry, pal.
Totally. Dragged in the no huddle offense.
In the no huddle. Yeah. So we are here to talk about the Boardroom Brawl because we took a hiatus on Oxide and Friends. We were Adam, you were out and I was out, and we were kind of visiting family naturally, as one does in the Thanksgiving week here in the U.S. And getting ready for kind of stitching things up. I was going to be with my mom all last week and getting ready to be done on I think it was Friday afternoon, right, Steve? Was that when the whole thing went down?
Yeah.
And this started with an absolutely remarkable message from the OpenAI board on the fate of their CEO, Sam Altman. So, Adam, where were you when you saw this?
I think I was like packing for flying or something like that. I can't remember, but like a bunch of friends were texting in the text thread, and I was like, why has the Oxide folks not pinged me yet? And of course, Oxide, all channels were blowing up with the news simultaneously.
They were all, and so actually, I was listening to. I don't know, do you listen to the Journal podcast? Do either of you?
No, I don't.
The Journal's good. It's a news by the Wall Street Journal, and I mean the people you've really got to feel for when something. This is huge news, huge business news. Business news does not get larger than this, where you have one of the largest, most important corporations just summarily fired their celebrity CEO.
Founder CEO.
What's that?
Founder CEO as
founder
well.
CEO. The founder CEO. And so that alone is just like, you've got major news. And this reporter from the Wall Street Journal was saying, I dashed out of my apartment so quickly that she forgot to close her door. Her door was open for 3.5 hours, basically. And I don't know if you were watching this over the weekend, there were so many turns to this drama. The reporters are like, dear God, I need to sleep.
Some of the reporters had slept in 2 days.
And so part of the reason, this would have been big news no matter what, but the thing that made this just off the charts 10.0 on the Boardroom Richter scale was the language in the termination of Sam Altman. So do you mind if I read this, Adam?
Please do. All
right. So, first of all, we should just say, when a CEO is fired, it's generally referred to pretty euphemistically. Hey, we thank Bob for his hard work, and Bob was going to remain an advisor to the company. Bob is going to spend some more time with his family. There's going to be some kind of flavor of thank you for your service, and I'm going out. You know what I liken it to? And actually, this is kind of when we had a CEO transition at a previous company. The way you really need to think of a CEO is, and sorry, Steve, I guess you're in the room, is as a starting pitcher for baseball. I mean, this is the way a board thinks of a CEO. It's like it's a starting pitcher, and it's like
not you, Steve. To be clear, but
no, not you, Steve. Generally speaking, you're our ace. You're by the blue man. You're going towards an ace. Yeah, absolutely.
Go to the distance.
But you're going to have to get the ball from your starting pitcher. And it's like, look, kid, it just wasn't your day. It's fine. It's like, it's not. And, you don't announce that by the way,
or good day, but your day's done.
It's a good
by the
day,
way, he's drunk and vomiting. Right.
Right. You don't come out there with a police officer when you get him off the starting mound. You know what I mean? It's and I do think it's this is, we ask being a CEO is the hardest job by far, and we ask so much of CEOs, and it's not unreasonable that over time. Steve, do you see why we're having this conversation?
100%.
Okay, good.
Now I know why you called me in.
God, this makes it so much easier. I thought this was going to be really.
Yeah, this is why we're doing it in public,
Email.
folks.
Just like, no, you gotta join this.
We need you to join this Google Meet right now. Yeah, if you could join this Google Meet, please. Adam and I are both here waiting for you. It's done cordially, and then it's occasionally done like less than cordially, like Bob is no longer with the company. You're like, whoa, what happened to Bob? But like no further detail, and then you're just like, okay, Bob, wow, okay, Bob is now you've got something that's going on, and then you got so that's it, and then there's like a whole bunch of, I would say, dead space, and then you get to the language that they used for Sam. So Mr. Altman's departure follows a deliberative review process by the board, which concluded that he was not consistently candid in his communications with the board, hindering its ability to exercise its responsibilities. The board no longer has confidence in his ability to continue leading OpenAI, which is just like, holy God. So Steve, what was your thought when you read that?
Oh, I mean, a nuke had dropped, and it was so the other shoe that was going to drop was so significant that it was going to potentially put at risk OpenAI entirely, the board. There was something significant here that was going to include legal matters.
Crimes.
100%.
100% crime.
Right, because not consistently candid has the smell of euphemism, covering such an overwhelming stench.
It's legal activity.
So there are two things here that's word euphemism to me. So not consistently candid says this person's been lying to us, and then hindering its ability, the board's ability to exercise its responsibilities. I'm like, the board thinks that they may have accidentally committed crimes because Altman lied to them.
This is like Theranos level stuff.
This is beyond Theranos level. This is like, we are in accordance with the call I just had with the DOJ. I'm going to issue this statement. But literally, I'm like, my first thought was, this is criminal, and he has fundamentally misrepresented some aspect of the financial position such that they are not a 501c3 was my first thought. Like, they have lied on their 990. Every one of these board members is like, I'm going to go to jail. I got a kid who's about to go to high school, and I'm not.
They're like, Sam, I'm not going to the can for you, buddy. Like, you're wearing this one, right?
You're wearing this one. I mean, like, that is just like, no doubt. And I think, Steve, that was your take, and Adam, I don't know if that was your take as well. But it was just like, I think anyone who's had been around a boardroom at all is just like, this is not, because people are like, well, do you think it could be like sexual impropriety? And I'm like, no, because sexual impropriety would be kind of in that former category of like no longer with the company,
well, I mean, could be, but in this case, criminal wrongdoing, and
that endangers the board. It endangers the board personally, where they've got a lawyer for OpenAI is like, you could go to jail. Like, everyone needs to lawyer up right now. And by the way, your executive and director insurance is not going to cover you. I mean,
because if not for that, it just is not written that way.
Exactly. You would never write it that way. You would never write it that way. And so that, I'm like, oh my God. And now I would say, of course, in this, we at Oxide had our launch some number of weeks ago, and it got a lot of attention on Hacker News, and we had noted in particular that this is the 222nd most popular story in Hacker News history. And man, my first thought was like, hello, 223. I'm like, there is just, you look at this, like, this is.
And Dan G at the top of the comments being like, everyone, if you could just log out and touch grass, like, it would help me a lot.
No, totally. Like, Hacker News having to hit like the safety valves, because like Hacker News literally going to blow up because
which is hard to do given the infrastructure they run that on.
How do you overrun a single core running FreeBSD? That's right. Hey, listen, I admire their architectural approach, but they are like, yeah, Adam, right? That's a good memory. Like, can you please everyone log out? Did you log out? By the way, it actually did make it a lot better if you logged out.
No, I was not following it in real time like you were, but it's fine that you were.
Don't fill this house with lies. It's fine. So
Wait, are you saying I'm
definitely-
not being consistently candid? Okay.
I'm just saying you're not being consistently candid, and frankly, I no longer have confidence in your ability to continue leading this podcast.
Not the first time I've heard it. Okay.
That's right. That happens, and then it becomes clear over the kind of the weekend that Altman is taken aback by it. I'm actually a little bit surprised, and Steve, I think you were too, by the number of people just like blanketly defending Sam Altman on this.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, man, I would be like given that statement, I would just like, let's just sit this one out and let's see.
Right, let's pause. Let's see what this is about.
Let's see what this is about. And then it becomes, and they have named they've named this woman as the interim CEO. And then I think the next thing to drop, I guess, was Greg Brockman.
Well, hold on, if I may, I don't think I'm getting this out of order, but in the Wall Street Journal, apparently the leadership team pressed the board over the course of 40 minutes for specific examples, and the board agreed to discuss the matter with their counsel. And after a few hours, they came back, still unwilling to provide specifics, and they said that Altman wasn't candid, often got his way, and they said that Altman was so deft that they couldn't even give a specific example. I just love that.
Yeah, it's like, at what point along here, it would be interesting to know if, like, from a journalist perspective, or Adam, maybe from your perspective, or Steve, from your perspective, like, at what point you're just like, wait a minute, are you putting me in the uncomfortable position of having to have sympathy for Sam Altman here? Because that would be really, really unfortunate.
To anthropomorphize him? Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and it became then they also, and then some of the dynamics of how he was terminated and Greg Brockman in particular tweets out a statement, and X's out a statement. What do you even say that? Post, whatever, tweets out a statement. And it's pretty clear that, like, Brockman not on board with whatever has happened. Like, Brockman is definitely not on board with it. And they have said, I mean, this is amazing to me, that they have told Brockman, we want you to be involved with the company. We want you to stay involved with the company. We're we're kicking you off the board. It's like, do you think that somebody is that gonna work? Do you think? And Brockman's like, I quit. Of course I quit. And
well, I think the other thing that happened before that is Brockman said, when the events in question, when I became aware of the events in question, and I might be getting the words wrong, but he was basically saying, when I became aware of this, and everyone was just like, what are you talking about? You were on the board.
You're on the board. Right. True.
What do you mean when it came to your attention?
Right.
You were front and center for this. Because again, at the time, you're just like, there's some big story to drop.
That's right. An indictment to drop, honestly.
Yeah. And he was saying, I when that came to my attention, I think he, then like realized that I should step down from the board seat, and it just raised even more questions. What is going on here?
What is going on? And it just seemed pretty clear that, like, oh my God, this is just, is this an amateur board? It's like the board cannot be this amateur, because, and this, I actually still have questions on this. It's like, a lawyer read your statement, though. Surely. I mean, surely. That a lawyer.
I mean, surely, right? Like, you don't fire the CEO without having told some grown up.
I would assume,
like a lawyer.
Well, and again, it felt so hasty that once again there was some big story that had not been unearthed yet, and then I think it was within 24 hours they came out with their second statement.
Right. Their second statement was, and I do have the second statement in front of you, but
just digging for
it's more or less like, no, there was no
malfeasance.
There's no malfeasance. It's like,
like,
what?
Whoa, internet. Hold on. There was no malfeasance.
There's no malfeasance. How'd you get that idea? I don't know. I'm reading what we wrote. I don't see how you get any kind of malfeasance from that. It's like, okay. I mean, you're obviously like,
surely you had a lawyer read your second statement.
Right. I also feel that, like, okay, I am, like, not litigious, and there are lots of reasons why I don't find Sam Altman sympathetic. you OpenAI board are now putting me in the position where I feel that Sam Altman should be litigious. I want to go litigate on Sam Altman's behalf because he's got a really serious case against that board, no question. I mean, I just feel is like without a doubt. And I still think there are going to be there have to be other turns on this, but I mean that it's. Which one is written? It is what would be libelous, right? Slanderous. Which one is which? Which one's written? I don't even know. But you would. I mean, they've absolutely defamed him, and they have without question, and they've done it like probably knowingly. Because like one thing that's kind of clear is like I think there might be some personalities involved. I think you all might hate one of those guts.
That started to become more and more
right.
Well, and now people are saying, as with the second statement, I think that is when everybody went into detective mode of like, let's take apart who the board is.
Right.
Who are these people?
Why are they
here?
And, this is where I do feel that kind of it is worth kind of taking a step back. All three of us have served on boards. I've been on company boards and nonprofit boards, and not a ton of them, but enough. And when you are on a board, like your responsibility is the executive leadership of the organization. It is the executive director. If you're a nonprofit, is the CEO. And you never take terminating a CEO or an executive director lightly. I mean, that's got to be something because it's like. As a board, you've got limited visibility to what's going on.
You don't take it lightly. You don't treat it hastily.
You do not treat it hastily. And because you are now taking responsibility in particular, because I remember, I was in an organization long ago and, we had an executive director that a lot of people had issues with. And I could see the issues, but I could also thought I saw a huge number of positive qualities that she had. And I also knew that this is a search for our organization has got some warts on it, and a search for a new leader for this organization. It's like it's not going to be pretty. I mean, I think sometimes it's very easy to focus on leadership's faults and not seeing their strengths, and then not really kind of being realistic about what a search looks like and what a search looks like for an organization that has no leadership, which is actually not. I mean, it was just kind of to go to your baseball analogy, it's like I've pulled the pitcher and now we're just going to have no one on the mound for a second. Just give me a little while. Just leave the mound out there. I'm going to go find it. I'm going to go back into the locker room. I'm going to go find a pitcher.
And presumably because you're down 27-0, right? You're only talking about this kind of
you're down 27-0.
Totally. Yeah, you're only talking about this surprise, kind of almost vindictive change because things have gone so far off the rails. So then you're conducting a search for the person who wants to sign up to go in down 27-0.
Also, bases are loaded and they're annoyance, by the way. Yeah. You're just kind of like, okay, well, I don't want to do this. It turns out lots of other people don't want to come in to this messy situation, right? And I know you've been in these situations too, where it's like when you have when you have decapitated leadership, or you have a total absence of leadership, anyone rightfully is going to be like, what is wrong with the org? Not just, and there probably is something wrong with the org, frankly, because you got a bunch of mess that's been left by the person you just gotten rid of, and you basically indicated to the world like, hey, we've got problems. We got big problems.
It is kind of indicative of the people who are interested in the position at that point.
Yes, it is indicative.
I mean, only in the good people can show up, but certainly lousy people also will be inclined to show up.
Lousy people are definitely going to be inclined to show up. I do think it's always entertaining. You get just the total pranks. They're like, well, I'll run OpenAI, sure. Why not? Because you almost I don't want anyone who's going to volunteer for the job.
Yes,
and it would be interesting to know the dynamics because I got to get the sequencing right about when they name the interim CEO. So they have the letter. They name the interim CEO. And she's like, I don't want to be the CEO. I don't want that. She was not.
It almost felt like they named her without her full support.
Without her full
support. Naming or even awareness of. Now, they'd said that she was part of conversations the night before it was announced.
Which is crazy. Which is, I mean, just
as was Greg. So Greg, both of them were part of this meeting the night before, which again is all part of that first 24 hours where it was, everyone was to understand that there was malfeasance, and there was a group of people that supported the decision. Narrator's voice. Definitely the opposite.
Well, it was, and everyone's trying to figure out kind of what the vote count is on this board. And the other thing that's weird is that Brockman was the chairman of the board. So this is something I wanted to ask you is, and I guess this is where we get into the bylaws about, can a non-chair, I actually have questions about just to get super bylaw nerdy here. Like, did they have quorum? Did they have? I mean,
I was about to say they wouldn't have done it without, but then there's a whole bunch of stuff that they should not have or would not have done it without.
But you need, and obviously I guess we probably could pull their bylaws because of it's a nonprofit. But I mean, one needs 24-hour notice to have a board meeting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that generally has to be in writing. Is it? I mean, obviously, this depends on your bylaws.
Yeah, it depends on the bylaws.
Right.
Because you can have situations where you can call an emergency board meeting.
You can call an emergency board meeting, but you need, without 24 hours of notice. I guess, it depends on the bylaws. But okay, so we've got a structure for, got it. Okay, well, good to know. And but then what
you can't, the reason that that's in there is so that you give everyone an opportunity to be able to attend. Like you can't call a board meeting and set that time limitation so short that people can't attend.
Right.
So that's why you have those limitations in place.
Right. Okay. So
presumably they gave notice with ample time, meeting their bylaws, and then were able to get everyone together. It is strange that the chairman of the board.
This is my question. It's like a mechanical question.
Right.
That how is the chair? I mean, what is the role of the chair if not to be the one initiating that meeting? I don't know.
I think that also depends on the bylaws. I mean, I've been on boards where the chair, literally was a position that we had invented for the outgoing CEO to have a little bit of pride.
But doesn't that mean that the CEO is the chair if you don't have a separate chair?
I don't know. I think it may depend on the bylaws, but I'm not sure how much power that necessarily carries. Depending on the specific structure.
Yeah, well, you are our lawyer. You are Adam Leventhal, corporate lawyer, right. Corporate attorney.
That's right. This is legal advice, folks.
This is legal advice. Let me just tell you something that those other chickens won't tell you. This is legal advice. I am your lawyer, and no, I'm not. No, I'm not past the bar in any state.
Got investment advice for you too if you stick around.
That's right. I got investment advice. Who wants medical advice? You want medical advice. So then there is at some point, and somewhere in this drama, there is a petition that gets signed by folks at OpenAI demanding that Altman be restored.
By something like 90% of employees.
Before that, you had 3 senior engineers, 3 people that were
the researchers were we're out.
Researchers that were saying we're out.
Yeah.
And then the kind of rumors that many, many more people were going to leave if, and it looks like someone posted, that someone is Adam. Job, Adam. The letter where then you had 720 of 770 employees that said that if he was not reinstated, they would quit.
They would quit. Okay, so
quit and go to Microsoft and work for Sam.
Yes. And now we are in this thing started out in bonkers land, and now we're just in where are we?
And these are hour by hour changes.
And then one of the signatures. So it should be said that one of the board members, who's the chief scientist, Ilya Sutskever, I'm probably mispronouncing that name, but so Ilya was on the board, had said it's regrettable that it happened this way. This did not happen in the best possible way, or was something. It's okay, that's definitely true, and it could have been worse. But then his name is one of the signatories of the thing demanding that it's what?
Where are we?
Now what? And this is when you just realize, like, oh my God, this board had absolutely, positively no idea what they were doing. And whatever their good intentions were, they all failed, I gotta say. I mean, in terms of like your responsibility, because part of your responsibility to the organization is actually like stability of that organization. And like you have somebody who is contemplating, and the board is small, right? They had 5 people, and the 5 people are going to fire 2 of them, right? It's like, wow, are you really?
Yeah, certainly not your job to destabilize a company.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, are we sure that that's what we want? Have you talked to a lot of people about this? Is this the prudent approach? Is this the only approach? Is this the only path left? And because it's like, even if you decided this, that like, we've really got, this is the move we need to actually make, you've got to get buy-in from the people. Like, you got to get Greg and Sam to agree that that's the transition that makes sense.
And at the very least, you need to have, some level of understanding or buy-in from the broader organization.
So, and I think this gets to like a bigger theme that I do think that for folks who haven't been on a board, or as you are on a board, as you answer to a board, as you're involved in a board, boards, in particular, the board meeting is not a place for surprises. Like, you shouldn't have sudden movement in a board meeting, I would say. And I think that
that's right.
And if you've got bad news that happens, you make sure that
you get that out in advance.
In advance.
Because what you want to talk about is not the bad news. You want to talk about what next.
That's right. That's right.
So let's just jump in here real quick.
Yeah, absolutely, Chuck. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well.
So I like you, I was really astonished at this whole event, the way it unfolded. But one of the interesting things is to think about it in terms of before the board made any moves, what were people thinking? And then after the board made its moves, what were they thinking? And I am I'm the treasurer of a nonprofit and on the board of it. And one of the interesting things here is, if you're going to fire the CEO, you have to assume, at least our lawyer told us, you have to assume the CEO is going to sue you for being fired for no cause. And so you have to have a case almost that you can lay out, in clear language. This is why we're firing you. These steps, A, B, C, and D. And when the board of OpenAI was unable to do that, it struck me as, this is clearly an inexperienced board. This is not a board that had thought about this in a way, and something has spooked them. Like you said, I'm waiting for, the shoe to drop where, oh, by the way, our AI just generated 18 gigabytes of child porn and we're all on the hook for
right.
possession or something, right? So there's a great column by Matt Levine, if you read Matt over in Bloomberg, which talks about the control lines on OpenAI, and then it has this giant money line where Microsoft is talking to the for-profit subsidiary, and it's clear, I think, now, wasn't then, but it's clear now that a lot of money is on the table, and that causes people to act in a way which is perhaps more money-centric than board responsibility-centric. And I think really, I felt like this became sort of conflicts between Sam and the board, and Sam seems to be very entrepreneurial, right? He wants to make money and wants to make this stuff work, and that's kind of his thing. And the board said, he's spinning up way faster than we can control, and we don't know what we can do, so we just have to stop this right now. And they didn't really talk to their general counsel, clearly, because if they had, they would have made a much better case.
I mean, do they have a general counsel? Like,
yeah, that's right. General counsel. He died 2 years ago tragically, a heart attack. We're still looking. We got an open rat chair.
And no, you actually, it brings up a good point though, because I think the other thing that was so stunning for folks is that Microsoft was completely blindsided.
Unbelievable that they were blindsided. They put $10 billion. It's like, we're sitting here, if you're an entrepreneur, like, it's hard to raise much smaller dollar figures than $10 billion. And I would just like to say that there are people who've put much less than $10 billion in Oxide that I believe that we keep pretty well informed, that we're under no, like, we have no, even you've got board observers, obviously.
You've got information rights. You've got
information rights, but we go beyond that, obviously.
You want well beyond that.
And yeah, I mean, it's just shocking that
for them to be blindsided. I mean, and this is kind of the point in which it seemed to jump the kind of broadened the folks that were paying attention to it. 'Cause I noticed when this showed up at the Thanksgiving table, like this is I did not expect OpenAI to make it to the Thanksgiving table. And the reason that it broadened so quickly is because of the board's actions. And now it crossed over into, one of Katie's cousins is an insurance broker and specifically does D&O insurance. And he's piping up about this, and he's like, oh, the entire industry, you have got like every board hitting up every management team asking what the D&O policy is for the company and is there sufficient coverage. And because at this point, everyone's convinced that the board of directors for OpenAI is going to spend a lot of time in court.
You would assume. I mean, I think that maybe that was because it was a kind of a question. At that point, and as these negotiations are going on to whether Sam and Greg go to Microsoft and effectively rebuild OpenAI at Microsoft, which to me felt like that. On the one hand, we like to say that the company walks out the door every night, but on the other hand, like, is that totally true? I mean, could you take the hundreds of people at OpenAI and take them to Microsoft and have the same without actually stealing anything? Could you? Because remember, like, you're kind of famously not like the open and OpenAI is not exactly open, so you can't exactly use the same stuff. I don't know. But so the fact that they had not notified Microsoft, I thought was absolutely shocking to me. But then clearly Satya's getting in there and is there is some leverage that's being exerted, and you do wonder if some of that leverage, Steve, that's being exerted isn't like, look, there's a lot. You guys have done so many things incorrectly here that there's a lot of fiduciary duty that you have actually violated by doing this, and you could be liable for that. And your check on this is like, well, if you bring us back, then to what degree do you think that Altman wanted to be back too? That's the other thing.
Well, I think he did. I mean, there was he tweeted that he was back on Sunday afternoon, and he had a guest badge because he was no longer an employee. So he had a guest badge, and he was tweeting from a couch, taking a selfie of like, this is the first and last
time I do this. I know
this badge.
Well, you could take one of two ways, obviously. Yeah.
A couple hours later was the other way.
Well, then to your point about the Thanksgiving table, I was like, so Mom, there's this thing called OpenAI. She's like, was Emmett Shear still the interim CEO, or has that been? I'm like, okay, all right, okay, right, I guess we're caught right up on it. I don't know, because then it's that's the other kind of angle in this is they name Emmett Shear as the interim CEO.
Emmett at one point unclear, like it was called CEO of the board. And then it was then corrected, and
I missed CEO of the board.
Yes.
Oh my God. That's
again, like, this stuff's flying around. You've got reporters that haven't slept in 3 days. I mean, you gotta have a little sympathy for how quickly all this is moving.
This is like OpenAI saying that we have named him CEO of the board. Oh my God. He's got to be like, oh no, please. I think you don't mean that. We gotta.
What are you talking about?
Oh my God. And so you got and then Chuck had raised this very and I think what is the kind of other shoe to drop? I think a lot of people are speculating. I think there's still speculation. I think we are still a long way from having the full story here. I think Chuck, you had a very good speculation about whether is this because there's tension between the commercial side and kind of the putative nonprofit side in terms of the 501c3. Is there then you have everybody is kind of seeing in this like Rorschach test what they want to see. And you have the people who believe it's like, no, it is the AGI is here. And there's a disagreement about how to welcome our alien overlords. I mean, it's like, oh my God, where are we right now? But then the fact that Emmett Shear is this person who believes that, I mean, he's the light cone Adam. That's the
Yeah.
light cone.
Yeah.
I'm sure you realized that at the time, but like we basically did an episode on this guy.
Yes. No, I know. I saw all of those. I think describing as a Rorschach test is so spot on, because certainly all of the AI doomers who I follow on Twitter but won't admit to were convinced that, maybe Sam was the hero here or Sam was the villain, but either way, AGI was involved.
AGI was involved, and this is the accelerationists versus the D-cells, which I admittedly,
right.
I had not seen that term before this weekend. I'm like, oh no, of course, the D-cells. And Emmett Shear is someone who believes that like we should take it down to a 1 or a 2 from a 10. This is kind of his exact language. And you got to think like, man, this is like, okay, you're the new CEO. We're going to bring it down to okay. That I've got some questions about that. So that becomes an absolute mess. And so then Emmett Shear, he can't get straight answers about why Altman is fired. And
yeah, he sends so Altman Sunday afternoon is being brought back purportedly.
Right.
And those discussions break down. And by Sunday night, Emmett Shear is announced. I think it was that same night he was announced and sent off his kind of letter to the company by way of Twitter. Sunday night, when he had woken up, I think was when that letter of like 730 people are resigning.
Right. So that's tough. And everyone's doing
and Satya had announced Sam was coming to Microsoft to stabilize the Microsoft share price that morning. And I think those 700, some odd people were basically just going to go over to Microsoft. And then, of course, the Clippy jokes came out of like, Clippy is the new open API.
Well, and you also had I think that there was a lot of question about, how when you have that kind of significant fraction of a company that is signing a petition, it's like, how is there any, is everyone going to Microsoft if they're free will? Because you're talking about going to Microsoft at this point, but having their kind of compensation met and so on, and then somewhere in all of this, they ultimately, like Shear is like, I need to get I'm not getting a straight answer about why Altman is gone. And as soon as I get a straight answer, I'm going to share it with the company. But if I don't get a straight answer, I'm going to leave. It's like, oh my God, okay, now what? And then when was and then ultimately, like, what? I think Kara Swisher had the scoop that Altman is actually coming back.
Yeah.
And so then they announce a new board. When was that? Was that on Tuesday? I mean, we're getting to the point where it's like, are you guys going to do this through Thanksgiving? Like, can't we? You got to be done with this at some point. And they announce a new board. Then you also think the Quora, who's the Quora person, Adam?
The Quora CEO.
Quora CEO.
Yeah.
And I know we'll get to the hot takes at some point, but there was one that was, there were a couple that were pretty good, but one
Adam D'Angelo
was like, once again, you can ask Quora something and get no good answer.
Right.
There's a lot of side swipes.
Well, I had my own side swipe. I own I did the little Game of Thrones meme. I want Sam to know it was Quora because he had a potentially rival product, and then there's the idea like, oh, his rival product was sabotage, so he kind of sabotaged the whole thing, and that's kind of seemed crazy. And then they actually announced they're like, all right, we got a new board, and I do think like everybody is publicly trying to figure out what's going on, as obviously we are too. And I think that one thing that is just important to know that this does shine a light on is just like if you look at someone, state of someone's marriage or relationship or company, when you are on the outside of a thing, you don't know all of the inner workings. And we still are a long way from knowing the actual inner workings here, what actually happened. But when you're on the outside of a company, you do not know what's going on inside of that company. And when you are inside of the company, you do not know what's going on necessarily at the board. And the what can be happening at the board can be very, very different than what's happening in the company. We tried it. Here, the transparency is really important to us, and we want to make sure that folks know, like, that we always present, the decks that we present to the board, we present to the entire company, so everyone knows exactly what the board is seeing. I think that's really important. Not every company does it that way, and you don't necessarily know what's going on. inside of the board. And so I think it's, as people are kind of assuming that it's D'Angelo, or then, the two women that are on the board are getting absolutely vilified online, and the whole board's being vilified online. And to a certain degree, it's like, well, you screwed up. And there's a level at which this is why you don't do it the way you don't do what you did the way you did it, because this is what happens. But on the other hand, it's like, people don't deserve this kind of public film.
No, and we still just don't know.
We don't know
so much about the story.
And then they name the new board, and it's going to be, okay, we're going to get Brett Taylor, who's got a good reputation in Silicon Valley. I don't know if I've never crossed paths with him. I don't know if you ever crossed paths with Brett Taylor. I'm not sure. But certainly has been on a bunch of boards, is indisputably a grown-up with respect to boards. Okay, fine. And then you get Adam D'Angelo still here. It's like, okay, so it looks like he won. And then Larry Summers. Like, what? Like,
that's a head scratcher.
That's a head scratcher. And this is where you get to, like, you kind of think of like board composition, and how do you get what does a good board composition look like? Because I think it's always interesting to look at a board composition, because it does also, it reflects the way a CEO is operating too. And the Larry Summers thing, I think it raises so many red flags. I mean, Larry Summers, first of all, has got his own problem. I mean, there's some hair on that one. I mean, Larry Summers has got his own challenges and problems. Larry Summers is also, former Secretary of the Treasury, but is not the first person I would think of. I don't know, Adam, what was your reaction to that one?
Felt very out of left field. Again, felt like almost Theranos playbook. But I did see he's on the board of Block, that Jack Dorsey company. So I don't know. Maybe he's in the family. It's interesting you mentioned Theranos, because Theranos, you describe some of the board members of, can we do Theranos board bingo? How many, George Schultz is the one is the Larry Summers analog I was trying to come up with.
Not Bill Frist.
Oh, good point.
I mean, that board was loaded with, like, what? These are all like generals, admirals. Was Henry Kissinger actually on the? I'm making that one up. I think
you're making that one up.
But it could have been, and that's the point.
Sure, exactly. Don't look it up.
So that was definitely weird. And then I think it's like, I obviously was not the only person to be like, hey, so you got rid. I mean, the board now, like the composition of the board, optics are not great on this one. Like you had a board that had 2 women on it, and now you've got a board that's got 0 women on it. And like, you may want to go solve that problem, among other things. I mean, just like let's get some measure of diversity here. I think that I think they heard that. Apparently the board's first task is to grow to a much larger board size. What is the ideal board size? That's another good question. I guess, obviously it depends on the size of the entity.
Yeah, and I think it's like, what do you want the composition of the board to look like before what size do you want?
Right.
Because like what you're looking for then helps to dictate the size, because you may want a bigger board with the right people added that are independent board members that add things that are going to be useful for the company, that can add, can provide a bunch of benefit, and you may elect to have a bigger board in that case. I think you typically want to have an odd number of board members. I would say that would be like an easier path. But having the right folks around the table, be it a small, medium, large size board, is I think the most important.
Yeah, and I gotta say though, like, if you are, their number one goal apparently is to now grow the board. It's not that attractive, I gotta say, as a board member. You gotta think like, I don't know, I need to know everything that happened.
Was that like the top priority? Grow the board?
I think that is what they have said.
Sorry, I got hung up going into Larry Summers' history and the fact that he was central in deregulating derivatives trading that led to the financial crash.
That is actually the least of his problems.
Let me keep going.
That is the least of his problems. Yeah, yeah. Are you into the more of the problems? Yeah.
That's
yeah. The more of the problems are actually definitely problematic.
God. Derivatives are fine.
And you would think like the derivatives are fine. Yes, you would think that you would at least like hit the Wikipedia page, and but you never know. I had known of a CEO and who had left the U.S. After and the kind of the scuttlebutt was that he had left the U.S. on Instagram that he was not going to pay any of the taxes that he owed.
Maybe took a picture of a jet that he was boarding.
He took a picture of a jet that he was boarding
with like a middle finger tagging the IRS.
Tagging the IRS. And then later, he was hired by someone, I knew someone on the board of a company that hired him. And my first thought was like, okay, obviously like that, this was kind of apocryphal. This was a kind of a story. This is like, clearly it's something he was told at a bar, but like clearly the guy does not owe a bunch to the IRS. And now it is weird, like was coming from Central America and was going to be coming back to the US. And I talked to this board member and I was like, yeah, okay, there's, what about like this tax issue? He's like, well, obviously we had to clean that up before we brought him on as CEO. I'm like, wait, what? And this is where it just boggles the mind. Why would you bring on, what is the board process by which you'd bring on a CEO who had this like huge tax dispute they needed to clean up before they could actually,
so the market's so thin for CEOs that you're like, well, maybe we can pay a few extra million to the IRS on this guy's behalf.
Well, and that was a company with a lot of problems. I actually do think that when you've got this is the challenge when you've got organizations that got a lot of problems. Like you don't have the pick of the litter when it comes to leadership, for board member composition or for leadership, and then you get like these kind of nutty things that happen. Just feels like very, very, very poor execution. One thing I would say is I saw a very good talk at Monktoberfest from Mike Olson. Do you know Mike? Adam?
Yeah.
Mike's great.
From Cloudera, right?
From Cloudera.
Yeah.
He was the founder and CEO of Cloudera, and Mike gave a talk at Monktoberfest on the importance of independent board members and how you find independence. And it was very good because I think that one of the things that I didn't really realize is like, we accept the board governance is something that's really important to us. I mean, obviously, like the board runs the company. And it's kind of remarkable when you encounter folks these like startups that don't have board meetings. It's like, yeah, we don't do any board meetings. It's like, you don't, the what? There's just.
Yeah, we think board meetings are a legacy way of operating a company. Excuse me.
Well, and then you have so you've got that. Then you have the folks, the investors who are like, no, we never take board seats. And on the one hand, like, okay, investors that always take board seats may be problematic too, but like not ever taking a board seat. And I think, sorry, here's for your consideration, Adam and Steve, I think that that's a little bit of a zero interest rate phenomenon in that you had this kind of protracted era. Well, so first of all, like way back in the day, it used to be boards had total control, entrepreneurs had none, and entrepreneurs were routinely fired. And you would routinely have, I'm talking like in the 80s.
Yeah.
And you would have like, you start the company, you get investment, and you get fired 12 months later.
Yep.
Because they're going to find a professional CEO. Like this was very typical. John Scully is kind of like, as a canonical example of that, but there are like lots and lots and lots of examples of that. And then folks realized that like, actually, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe this founder CEO actually knew what they were doing and that was a mistake. And then we kind of went to the opposite extreme where it's like you have the Adam Newmans where they've got super controlling shares. This is still true for Zuckerberg. Facebook, I mean, Meta, he can change the company's name to Meta. He cannot be fired. It's a public company. He cannot be fired. He has control of the board. He's got super voting shares. And you would think it's kind of maybe in that era where investors are like, well, the entrepreneur's going to have super control anyway. It's just not worth taking a board seat. But I think it's a mistake. I mean, I think it's a mistake because I think that like you actually want to be in that kind of moderate middle where you need to have a board that's going to work together to to actually.
Well, I don't even know that it was a choice. I mean, I think it was in that zero interest rate phenomenon when you had companies that were raising and very competitive deals and being able to be investors. One offer was like, we won't take a board seat.
Yep, that's true.
It's the all cash offer, no contingencies, no inspection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Also a zero interest rate phenomenon.
Yeah, and you go certainly have got the opposite extreme of like investors that want to put in very little money, and I mean they don't necessarily want a board seat, but they want a board observer seat, which is also there's a hassle factor that you're dealing with there.
But I think in that era you had a lot of companies that viewed board members as kind of a tax, sort of an overhead that you had to deal with, rather than I think that Mike's talk was great, and he was talking about what the board's job is, and then what you're looking for in a board, and a lot of the pros and a lot of the value that what you want is you want board members that are passionate about the company and believe in the mission and do their homework and are trying to figure out how to better the company in a bunch of different directions. And I know we can certainly say that we're very lucky in that in our board meetings the folks on the board are coming in having read all the materials.
And please, if you are ever on a board,
which I know sounds like a low bar, like what do you mean read the materials?
I know.
Isn't that just table stakes? Like, well, no.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, no.
And I think if you are an executive, if you're a CEO, if you're an executive director, make sure that your board members have materials in advance. And then if you are on a board, please read those materials. It is amazing to me. And Adam, when you've had boards, I'm sure you've been surprised by the people that have not read the materials in advance.
Surprised to the point of my just complete confusion on my part. Like, how can you not understand? Like, this was sent to you in advance. This is not that complicated. You're barely paying attention. This might sound quaint, but even if you're joining a company, a startup of even like hundreds of people, understanding the board is not a bad idea. If you've got a board with founders and then a bunch of their buddies on the board, or they've got super majority rights, just don't be surprised by that. Like when the last thing you want when you join a company is to be surprised by the executive structure and find out that the board doesn't have this power, or the board is composed entirely of cronies who know nothing about the business. Because the board can be a very important check in your favor as an employee, like knowing that there's someone who's out there reining in maybe the potential craziness of a CEO. Not you, Steve.
Not you, Steve. I mean, the current company excluded, but no. I mean, Adam, all three of us in previous lives have had CEOs that were fired by the board because they were reining in the crazy, and And I think that, and it was actually kind of another interesting point is that we have all been involved in boards that have fired their CEOs. And so we've all kind of seen the pro way to do this. Actually, one very concrete anecdote on that. If you are in a position where you are on a board and you need to fire a CEO, part of the reason that you want to have them bought into their departure, which, by the way, is going to cost you at some level. Right, you're going to have to accelerate their shares. You're going to have to pay them at some level to leave amicably, but you want to leave them amicably because I would say that one thing that we learned, and again, previous lives, but the severance agreement of the CEO forced their shares to vote management, which is really, really important, and that can be. These kinds of things can be really important because when that company was acquired, the acquirer wanted a very, very, very high percentage of shares to vote for the deal. They wanted 97% to vote for the deal, which is extremely high.
And by the way, these are 5 years apart. So it could have been
these are 5 years apart.
A pretty trivial negotiated point on this transition, and yet ended up being very load bearing for a transaction. And fortunately, like that board did it right. Like that, when the board kind of when they exited. How do you feel about exit as a verb, Adam?
I mean, it's a nice euphemism that you save for exactly the situation.
Yeah.
You don't put it in. Doesn't performance bother you, or does performance bother you? Performance bothers me
Deeply.
Okay.
It bothers me.
How about
I
learnings?
don't want to talk about it. Learnings, I don't get as bent out of shape as you do. I know that,
Performance
but
worse
out of
than
solidarity, I will say learnings is a death sentence.
Thank you. I no longer have to exit you because you. When you, I guess exit doesn't bother me. I probably should, but learning drives me nuts. So does performance, but I'm tolerant of exit. And when this CEO was exited, it was done in a way where their shares voted management. Be sure you do this. So be sure that everything is kind of negotiable when you're in that moment where you're like, okay, this person, and it's at that moment, like everybody wants to turn the page when you're and I'm not talking about the Altman situation. I'm talking about like, we've got the wrong person in here. We actually don't even know who the right person is. We just need to get this person out. But yet that's really important that you get a lot of this stuff negotiated. And it's important that you figure a bunch of this stuff out, and the board's going to have to pay for some of this stuff. But these are things that are really important to assure the organization. The organization is the one that needs to survive. And then
my favorite part of this OpenAI thing was, before any of the CEO shenanigans came out, there was this tender offer. Valuing the company at $86 billion with a B, tender offer to employees to sell their shares, which on its face is already crazy. Like in fact, a friend of mine told me this, and I was convinced that they were wrong. I convinced that they had been confused about something just because it made no sense to me. Now, my favorite thing about everything that's transpired is apparently the deal is still on the table, and all of this has not moved the price one penny. It's still $86 billion. It's not worth more. It's not worth less. The price is still the price, despite everything that has transpired. And that I just think is so remarkable.
It is. It's like, no, the price hasn't moved. I mean, it moved,
the same team.
Right.
Sure.
Stronger board.
Briefly, it went down to zero. Sure. But now it's back, and it's not back to a different number. It's back to exactly the same number.
Exactly the same number. Well, I think everyone just like, can we please just pretend that all of this never happened? And
that's right. It's amnesia ray for sure.
I think it is. I think there's a level, and this is one of the things that was kind of interesting about this whole like terrible dynamic. It felt like at some level, all parties wanted to actually get the genie back in the bottle. Like everyone, I mean, you got to think that like the belligerents here realized this was not the way to do this. Like this, if you wanted to get Altman out, like this is not this is not the way to do it. And if you wanted to make it, to Chuck's earlier point, if you wanted to make it more open, or Adam, do you have any speculation about what this is actually about? I mean, I know that we've said not to speculate, and then here we go. But
yeah, unfortunately, I think I feel like there's the AI doomers might have something to do with it. That is to say, some of the board members got wrapped around the axle on some, or maybe they like watched the most recent Mission Impossible and decided that the omniscient AI was here, and that's the thing about which Altman was not being perfectly candid.
That the light cone demanded that this is like AI baby Hitler, and they had to like knife it in the cradle.
Yeah, but apparently they lost their nerve and couldn't finish it off or whatever. And well, I mean, what do you think? Like, do you have? I mean, I feel like every guess is outlandish, but
every guess is outlandish. Yeah, I mean, and I was like definitely very dismissive of that early on. I'm like, it cannot, like, there's no way you would have this kind of like abstract disagreement over the future of AI. But then you had this whole Q star thing. What do you make of that? Did you follow that?
Yeah. I mean, and my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is Q star is some amazing breakthrough that the margin of the web page, does not have space to contain.
Yes, thank you. Literally tripping over one another to make the. So I would. Does everyone make the Fermat reference as frequently as you and I do, Adam? I love that reference.
You know what? It seems unlikely, if I'm honest.
So this
So
is
we'll have a footnote to that in the notes.
footnote to this, but this is it's Pierre de Fermat, right? It's
Yeah.
the Pierre de Fermat who developed Fermat's theorem, Fermat's little theorem and Fermat's last theorem, and famously said, "I have a truly marvelous proof to this that this margin is too small to contain," and then died. Or at
least never wrote it down. Yeah,
never wrote it down. And the kind of the consensus is that Fermat did not have that proof. That Fermat's proof would have been flawed. That he had a simple but flawed proof, a truly marvelous but also flawed proof. But we actually don't know that.
Right.
And did you have Professor Hofstein at school, Adam?
I did, in fact.
Did you? So you had. So this is a prof that you and I shared, although across a number of generations. And I had the privilege of having I took number theory from him. Sorry for the diversion. I took number theory from him in the spring of 1993. And Hofstein is he's a live wire. That guy. I really liked him. He's a little nuts.
He was super nuts. Yeah, totally nuts.
In a way that is delightful, but also a little scary. And he wrote Fermat's last theorem on the board. And he's like, this is true. Fermat's proof was flawed. We don't know what it was. We can't prove it.
And this is 93 he's doing it. That's great.
It's 93. He's like, we cannot prove it. And if there's ever a proof to Fermat's last theorem, I'm jumping to my death from the sciences library. And it was like,
okay.
It's like, I felt like a lot of unnecessary detail.
Well, spoiler, I took a class from him in 2000 or something. So
okay, and he was like, did he look? Yeah, was he?
Noticeably alive. Yes,
noticeably alive. Yeah, so it's and then it was in the summer of '93 that Wiles had his proof for Fermat's last theorem. I'm like, has anyone done a welfare check on Jeffrey Hofstein? I mean, the guy was extremely explicit that he was going to jump to his death, his words, if there was a proof. And I saw him in the fall, very much alive. And I asked him about this. And I asked him about what do you make? And he's like, Wiles' proof is going to be flawed. There's going to be a flaw in it. And then there was a flaw in it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the flaw in what is a truly singular act of human resilience, Wiles fixes the flaw. But I think that Hofstein has got the angle on that. I mean, we can say with absolute certainty that Wiles' proof is not the one that Fermat's margin was too small to contain. I think
that's right.
Wiles'
That's right. Yeah, apparently branch. I don't know the details, but branches of math that had not been explored at all in that era.
Yeah, it seems unlikely that. But I feel like you make that reference. That this is I've got something that is that. So Q star, it was just funny that you said that because I felt the exact same way. I've got a truly marvelous breakthrough in artificial general intelligence that this margin is too small to contain. It was kind of my view on Q star, but maybe we're too jaundiced.
Yeah, good. Show me. I don't know. That'll be great. Or I'll be enslaved to it. Either way.
Or we're gonna fight for the light cone together. I thought we were on the.
That's right. The light cone reservists, yes.
The light cone reservists. Yeah, exactly.
You got to reserve that domain name already.
I did not follow the Q star stuff closely, but apparently that is what led Ilya to construct the coup.
This is the kind of thing that is
the narrative.
This is one of the narratives that's out there. Is that this thing Q star was developed? It was just this unbelievable breakthrough. That is this huge step function.
Too big of a breakthrough.
Too big of a breakthrough. And humanity's just not ready for it. So we're going to fire Sam Altman. And basically
he'll take it and run with it.
Yeah. And also he'll take it hey, OpenAI board, next time you want to fire a CEO, have ChatGPT write the press release. 100% would have written a better press release. No question.
And then do it again, but say, as if you were a lawyer.
As if you were a lawyer. Fire the CEO, and it's going to be. I mean, it will absolutely do a.
It's wild they didn't run it through GPT first, because it would have very much helped.
Oh, for sure.
That release they put out there,
it would have very much helped, and someone in the chat is saying if this wasn't so ludicrous, I'd say it was a PR stunt. I mean, it was. It feels like
brilliant one.
Oh man, that would be next level. It's like God, we really hooked you all on that, didn't we? But there's a little bit, and I do feel that, if you all at OpenAI feel that you are developing something that affects the future of humanity, and you can't figure out the most basic elements of board dynamics, like, do we have the right people in charge? We humans, does humanity have the right people in charge? So I don't know. Well, we'll see.
So
I think we got some. I don't know. Steve, what was your gut on? I'll tell you that. Like, I think they hate one another's guts. That's what I think it is.
Yeah.
I'll just be.
Do you think it's like Sam was a colossal asshole to some or all of them, and they're like,
enough.
And
I think enough, and I think that they think that they. I think that they were probably a little, probably felt that Sam was representing all of OpenAI, probably too frequently. And the guy is the CEO, though. So feels like he's got the
feels reasonable.
Feels like not.
Seems like the job description, but I don't know.
Feels like it's in the job description, but I think that they. Just like I feel like in some of the language too, that like, he's constantly. He's so next level in his manipulation of us that he's manipulating me right now into thinking that I can't think of a specific example.
But again,
it's
if that's it, and then you move to hastily fire him based on that there's consequences.
There's consequences, unfortunately. It is, and there are going to be. I think that there will be some consequences for some of those folks. I do think that, and I hope the positive consequence should be that everyone should be really thinking about the importance of board governance. I think, Adam, you had a very good concrete suggestion of, when you take a job, when you're in a company, what's the board structure? And ask that question. And what's their background? And how does this work? And who controls the company? Not that you're, as an employee of a company, you don't necessarily affect it, but it's good for you to know. And I think and then I think you also want to look at what what is the relationship between the leadership and the board, and what is their. I think it's important to what you put in front of the board, you should be putting in front of the company. I think it's actually, and that's not always comfortable because you've got sometimes you're putting. You're putting bad news in front of one of those groups that you might not want to talk about. But I think it's like you want to get everyone on the same page about the bad news and the good news.
Yeah.
And then I think the other bit, I do think that and Ian is saying this in the chat too, like the power struggle between the nonprofit and the commercial entity, the way this thing is structured is super goddamn weird. And I do think that the structure of it, avoid structures like this. This is a very, very, very strange structure.
Yeah. I don't know what a capped profit entity is. It's the first time I've heard of such a thing, but it sounds complicated.
And wasn't the profit cap is ludicrously high? I mean,
it's like infinity $1 billion too.
Infinity $1 billion. No, it's capped at infinity billion. Like the next infinity billion you get. I'm like, this is like
that all goes to the charity,
like
right?
Another thing. It's like, wait a minute, is this going to be the wallet inspector thing again? Because I want my money back.
Yeah.
Well, we will wait for the next. The next episode. I don't think this one is completely done. I would say the other thing I would also recommend in addition to checking out Mike Olson's talk, I think that if you just reading historically about companies, it's like there's a lot of boardroom battles that are pretty interesting in terms of the board composition really matters in companies. So it's certainly
Barbarians
at the Gate. Barbarians at the Gate. Have you read Barbarians at the Gate, Adam?
I have, but I think it's been 20 years.
Oh, it was
probably worth a reread.
It is worth a reread. It's very good.
Same boat. I hadn't read it for a while. I reread it.
And I will also then put in a plug for IBM and the Holocaust, which I just finished. Edwin Black, very good book. Much of that book is actually boardroom struggles because it is the control of this German subsidiary, Deomag, and the kind of the battle over that. And there is a bunch of they are constantly doing things being actually that board meeting in which you awarded yourself that is not an actual board meeting because you didn't have quorum or because you didn't there's a lot of and certainly you get into the 19th century and you get the boardroom is where these things are happening. So it's very important stuff.
And next week,
yeah, you were talking about next week. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, we got Nirav Patel from Framework Computer. building cool laptops that are serviceable and you can take them apart and put them together. Brian, you just got yours. I've had one. Actually, I say I've had one, but actually my older son stole it from me almost immediately. But it's a great box with a lot of shared philosophy. So really with Oxide. So really looking forward to that conversation next week.
That's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the framework, folks. And yeah, this is a kindred spirit. I like having our I like having our kindred spirits out there. Got similar views for what compute should be, and doing a lot of Rust firmware too. So
yeah,
really neat stuff. And as A172 is saying in the chat, it's not often that we get one new computer company, let alone two. It's like, yeah, we get
there you go.
2 new computer companies. So fun stuff. And I'm sure the OpenAI board will have changed 6 times between now and then.
It's been a week.
Right.
That's a safe prediction.
So exactly. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.